Okay, so we are using wet chemistry to synthesize the anti-malaria lead compounds. And this one is being done by a PhD student, and we've been able to isolate one compound, and we've sent the product to UNISA, South Africa. And also at the same time, the student is preparing a review paper. So the next one. So now I'm on nanoscience, which improve the efficacy, and actually through nanoscience we can actually target the desired cells. For example, in malaria, is red blood cells. It's not moving. It's jumping slides. I don't know what. In Aruka slides. Maybe they should do it from there. Anyway, let me continue. I've jumped quite a number of slides, so I don't know where I am now. One of the master students is developing a malaria diagnostic kit. Because normally when one is sick, when one feels sick in the morning, you think, oh, it must be malaria. And they start taking anti-malarials. And if they're not well after 3 days, they go to the hospital. And that is what has made the parasite resistance of malaria treatment. So we are trying to develop a personal kit where you can wake up in the morning and actually test yourself whether you actually feverish because of malaria or is flu or whatever it is. So this one we're developing with Mintech in South Africa. And we've already prepared a proposal. We've sent it through Professor Ortarchi, and he's accepted the proposal. So that will be developed, and we'll have a personalized malaria kit with a very high sensor and very sensitive to detect malaria. So it was a point of care and personalized. Actually, I've jumped so many slides, I don't know what is going on. Because this is actually... of course, when I was presenting, we're also working on nano biofertilizer. Biofertilizer and biopesticides, they are very potent, but they use their efficacy very quickly. So as such, when you encapsulate them by using nano carriers, they last for longer. And this will help us to move from synthetic biofertilizer and synthetic pesticides, which are actually harmful to our health. So for this, we're working with Northwest University, and we submitted a review paper, and the student is doing the research, and a lot has been done on that. I've jumped quite a number of slides. I don't know what happened. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, there was 2 slides where I was showing who I'm working with in South Africa. Can someone help? Like 4 or 5 slides are not here. This was actually my last slide, where I was trying to talk to the funders that we need to establish a nanoscience hub in Nelson Mandela. Because, for example, in Tanzania, I'm the only scientist in nanomedicine. And I knew that when I was trying to recruit other scientists or postdocs, and when I advertise, I hardly got anybody who went the background. So it's important that, can you go back? It's important that this technology becomes a hub, especially in the eastern, maybe in the, I don't know, western region. And with this technology, you can do a lot of things very quickly. For example, when COVID came around, they were able to come up with a vaccine very quickly because of using nanoscience, nanomedicine. So this technology has done so much in cancer drugs, in vaccine, but it's hardly established, apart from South Africa, anywhere in the region. So I was urging our funders to look into this. Can you go back? Because I'm talking on that slide, but it's not there. Okay, next one. Next one. I think they've just disappeared. Next one. Next one. Next one. Next one. Next one. Next. I think they've just disappeared. Quite a few slides have disappeared. I don't know where they went. Next one. Yeah, so I'm missing like 3 slides where I was showing who I'm working with in South Africa, because I'm working with quite a number of universities in South Africa, from nanomedicine to synthesis and isolating of the compounds, on characterization, but all those slides are missing, so I don't know. But anyway, with the last slides is that we want to enhance research infrastructure. Nanoscience is not cheap, so the infrastructure is very expensive, so one need to get proper funding for the infrastructure. And of course, with that kind of infrastructure, we can attract diaspora from all over the world to come and work in Nelson Mandela. Mind you, Nelson Mandela is a Pan-African institution, so we are not funding just a one university or a one institution. It's actually a Pan-African institution. And with a name like Nelson Mandela, it becomes very attractive. Yeah, just continue. Those slides I'm just missing. Next one, next one. Next one. Next one. Next one. Next one. Another one. Because after here there were 3 slides. Next slide. Yeah, between, on the 3, there's actually 3 slides. Like that one, like that one. And another one before that. Before that. Okay. Okay, now since I've seen them, let's go now. Okay. For example, what kills most of the people in malaria is the cerebral malaria. That's when malaria crosses the BBB, blood-brain barrier. And there's no treatment which can cross the BBB. So what happens is someone will just die because of the cerebral malaria. But with nano medicine, we actually are developing a carrier which will cross the biological barrier and actually administer the anti-malaria in the brain. So that is a very important finding and is only possible because of nanomedicine and because of the size which we are working on. And for example, another issue is quinine. Quinine is potent, but it's also very toxic. And they only actually administer quinine when someone is very sick. And because of the toxicity, people end up dying because of the toxicity. But with this, with nanoscience, we can improve the bioavailability and we can actually target the red blood cells. So we can use 10% of the quinine, which actually will be normally used. And that 10% is not toxic anymore. So that's the science we are working with someone in Northwest, no, is Western Cape University, Professor Admire. Next one. Yeah. So that one we are working on a review paper, and the student is a postdoc student who is going there very soon. And another type of malaria is severe malaria, and that one is also very, 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 very lethal indeed. So with that one, we have to target the red blood cells which is affected by malaria, and we can only do the targeting by nanoscience, nanoparticles, nanocarrier. We can never target with any other way, but because of the size and because of the way it's so versatile, we can actually target the red blood cells and be able to heal the person very, very quickly. Next one. Yeah, I think I've gone through all the slides, although it was upside down. But the message here is nanoscience or nanomedicine is not well known in the rest of Africa, but in South Africa, they've got big institutions, not one or two, I think quite a number of nanotechnology, nanomedicine, nanoscience institutions, whereby they're focusing in water, some of them they're focusing in diagnostics only, some of them they're focusing on delivering of malaria, of medicines. And I was trained from there. I actually was first trained from University of London, and then I came to South Africa, where I worked for 15 years. And I learned all these things. So when I went to Tanzania, I could not, of course, use that what I knew, because there was no facility. Nobody was actually aware of it. Luckily enough, I got the Oliver Tambo Award. So by this, I'm actually developing the critical mass which is needed. I've already got 9 to 10 people, so I believe in another few years I can be able to build the capacity up to 20, and that's the only way to go forward. And with further funding, we can expand the knowledge, we can expand the critical mass, because with these new technologies, cutting-edge technology, that's the only way we can be ahead of things. I think that's it for now. Any questions?
Encore un banc bien nourri pour notre présentatrice. Merci beaucoup et désolé pour les difficultés techniques. On avait un problème au niveau du son, on avait également un problème au niveau des diapos, mais je pense que tout est réglé. Alors, elle nous a présenté tout ce qu'elle a pu faire au niveau de la Tanzanie, où à partir de plantes médicinales qui sont déjà utilisées par la population, ils ont fait des sélections. Et ensuite, ils ont pu découvrir des molécules. Et à travers ces molécules-là, ils ont fait de la nanotechnologie pour pouvoir utiliser une infime quantité de ces substances-là qui peuvent aller cibler au niveau du système nerveux central pour pouvoir traiter le neuropalu. Voilà. Donc, si vous avez des questions, on va prendre 3 questions avant de poursuivre. Merci.
Thank you very much, presenter, for this exposition. You've said that in Tanzania, the tribes, the different tribes have solutions for malaria, and you mentioned a number like 120. I was just wondering whether we should, first of all, not promote those solutions, because you've given an example of Maasai, who can basically immunize themselves for 6 months, and shouldn't we, first of all, promote those solutions, and then we go to nanotechnology. Then now going to nanotechnology, which is the base of your research. Yes, I think you've talked generally, but you've not talked about the science of what you are using the nanotechnology for. I know there could be IP issues and the fear to divulge what you are doing, but at least you should have taken us through the basics so that we can appreciate what's being done. Thank you.
Okay, first of all, if you want to use what the Maasais are using, this is a concussion, which is a cup of a boiled something you have to drink, and most of the time they won't tell you exactly what it is unless, of course, now we talk to them and perhaps you sign an MOU. So it's not easy to sell a concussion of a cup. We need to come up with capsules, and we need to know, as scientists, we need to know how it works. You cannot go to WHO and tell them you can cure malaria, but you don't know exactly what is in it and how it cures. So we need to drive science. That's why we are scientists. And for nanoscience, I had a slide or two to explain. Nanoscience or nanomedicine is just a vehicle, but of nanometer scale, let's say 30 nanometers. That is very, very small indeed. When you cut, like you stretch your hair and cut across, it's only 10% of the width of your hair. Just imagine your width of your hair, you cut across, and it's only 10%. And it's also 10% of the smallest cell in your body. So it can be delivered intracellularly. That's why it's so effective, because it can go into the cell and actually enter the cell and deliver the cargo. So this is the particle which has got a cargo in, and you can actually functionalize it to cross all the biological barrier, to cross the epithelial wall, and actually you can also functionalize it not to be recognized by phagocytes. So it can be hidden, it can hide itself and move around and deliver the cargo where it's supposed to go, and especially if it's targeted. So that's the science behind it, and there was a slide on that, but I don't know what the system did not allow me to do that.
Yes, thank you very much, Prof. Hulda. Very interesting presentation you've given, and the kind of innovation that seems to be emerging from it. I'm just curious if you would tell us more about the small molecule drug which you have developed with Mintech, which you said was at preclinical stage now. And this is quite interesting, of course, because the continent is doing very badly on small molecule drugs. Yours would be probably the third one that's getting to clinical stage, second one that's getting to clinical stages. But you did not tell us much about it, how it was developed. Was it a de novo developed drug, or was it repurposed drug? There is some rational design that it seems you have done on it, but you didn't tell us more about it. Yeah, I'm curious to know the development of that drug. Also, the matter of nanoparticles and the blood-brain barrier also is something that I think maybe you would like to look more carefully to it, because the nano delivered drugs need serious pharmacokinetics at the moment, because they may cross the blood-brain barrier, but the matter is the body must get rid of drugs when it's got into it. and it's often difficult to get rid of the nanoparticles. So I wonder if you had any, if you have any comment to make on that approach, because if it does get into the African population, we want to know that you know it's properly developed drugs.
Okay, first of all, in Mintech, where we are not developing a drug with Mintech, is a diagnostic kit. Because they've already got a HIV diagnostic kit where we can diagnose yourself and know whether you're HIV positive. We went there, I think 3 months ago, and that's why they showed us the kit. And they told me with the same platform, we can create something for malaria. That was Professor Laki's advice, and he has agreed on it. And I sent a proposal, and he's well happy to take the student. And regarding the drug I was talking, actually this is from the traditional healers or from the indigenous knowledge custodians. So it's a drug which was already being used, but of course without science we don't know what it works, what it doesn't work. So we use the computational method or in silico. This is a highly scientific method, and we did it with ICTP in Italy. It's called the International Center for Theoretical Physics. And with that, they can actually use the computational method to know what is the active compound, what is to be targeted. So through that, that's how we were able to develop the two drugs. So it's computational and in silico method. Yeah, but the drug is already being used in the nature, but it is used in form of a concussion, and we need it to come up with capsules whereby we can actually show the world that how it works, what works, and the like. And regarding the BBB, crossing the blood-brain barrier is a subject well studied, like for Alzheimer's diseases, Parkinson. There's a lot of publication on that. And we encapsulate with biodegradable polymers mostly, or lipids. Because if it's a biodegradable, it degrades into, for example, if it's polylactic glycolic acid, it degrades into lactic and glycolic acid, which are already present in your body. So it doesn't harm your body. Or if it's a lipid, lipid is lipid. So we only use biodegradable, compatible, approved by FDA carriers. So we don't go outside there, because then you're in trouble. So the body will easily get rid of whatever it is.
I see more hands, but I've got a mic. Good afternoon, Professor.
Good afternoon.
I don't know if mine is a question or a comment, adding to, I think, the first speaker's comment. To say, I think it's regrettable that, you know, some of your slides went missing. We would have liked to see more in-depth information regarding the nanoscience and the phytomedicine research. Because I think in the audience, some of us are in phytomedicine and nanoscience research. So it would have been, I think, very helpful. And also, we would have appreciated the novelty or the innovation in your research. Just to point out a few elements. One is in the nanoscience for treatment of malaria. We use it a lot for treatment of brain tumors. But there are nonetheless a lot of challenges that we have not been able to resolve, even using the nanocarriers, etc. So one would be interested to see how you work on targeted delivery, how you specifically target delivery to avoid toxicity of the brain, which is quite sensitive. There are a lot of technologies that are going into, you know, phyto-nanomedicine. And one of the developments is to move away from having to get individual molecules, like pure drugs from phytomedicine, to try use phytomedicine holistically as it is used in the traditional sense. So one would have been, interested to see how you promote traditional medicine as it is used by our communities, but also integrate it with nanoscience. Not really following the orthodox way of separating and getting individual constituents, but using and promoting and developing traditional medicines as it's used by the African communities. And I think that's where we're moving towards as African researchers, to say, how do we promote our own medicines, but integrate technology and move forward? So I think I would have been interested to hear you touch on those critical elements. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, that was in one of the slides, whereby we take the traditional medicine as it is, but of course, it's in a concussion. You need to dry it down or dissolve it in ethanol and get a powder form. And when you do in vivo studies, if it crosses the biological barrier, and you can see it, or the epithelial wall for that matter, you can see it in the bloodstream, then you know it is fine. And if it's not, in most of the case, actually it's not. So then that's why you use nanomedicine as a carrier. And with that, of course, you coat with things like chitosan, which can adhere on the epithelial wall, and which can actually open that theta junction. I mean, there are so many deep science on that, whereby I thought if I try to talk that language, I will lose 3/4 of the audience. So if you want me to talk about it, we can discuss later. But then I have to go into epithelial wall, I have to go into the closing the biological barrier, I have to go into the size, functionalization, pegylation, and all that. They are all foreign to most of the people here. Yeah. So we can talk later if you want. Or if you want, you can tell the organizer to give me another 20 minutes to talk about just nanoscience. I'll be excited actually to do that.
Ok, merci. Moi, j'ai une dernière question. Est-ce que cette nanotechnologie serait accessible pour nos populations africaines? Bien, quelqu'un pourrait traduire? C'est bon? Ok. Voilà, la question c'était, est-ce que cette nanotechnologie serait accessible par nos populations? Parce que ce qu'il faut, c'est que nous soyons indépendants, que nous produisons nos médicaments. Ça ne marche pas? C'est bon? Ok, d'accord. J'ai dit en Afrique, ce qu'il faudrait, c'est que nous soyons un peu indépendants pour avoir notre souveraineté, que nous puissions produire nos médicaments et à partir de ce que nous utilisons depuis des millénaires. Et on voit que vraiment ce que vous avez présenté, c'est une très bonne technologie, mais est-ce qu'elle serait accessible à nos populations?
As I was saying, it's only South Africa where nanomedicine is actually practiced seriously. And I worked there for, I think, 15 years. That's why I learned and practiced my nanoscience. But in the rest of Africa, from what I know, there's hardly anywhere where there's a serious group on nanoscience or nanomedicine. So it's something which our funders, or we in Africa, I don't know, we should look into it seriously, how to develop critical mass in nanomedicine, which we don't have.
Ok, très bien. Merci beaucoup. Donc, on va remercier professeur Hulda Sway pour sa présentation. Encore un banc pour elle, puisque c'était vraiment très intéressant cette présentation. Merci. Nous avons 1 heure de retard. Pour gagner du temps, on propose de passer les 3 présentations, l'une après l'autre, et de prendre les questions. Alors, les professeurs Giza, le professeur Gérald n'est pas avec nous ce soir. Donc, professeur Chanda Emmanuel va présenter et on va terminer par professeur Kwesi Firibou Salia. Professeur Giza.
Hello, good afternoon. I hope I will not face the same problem like the previous speaker regarding the slide. My chair, Ortarchi chair, is in climate change and adaptation in water, vegetation, and livestock resources. I represent Botswana International University of Science and Technology. By birth, I'm an Ethiopian. The project objectives are threefold here, as you can see on the slide. We are looking at climate change adaptation and sustainable resource management and biodiversity conservation. We started working on this project since 2022. It will run until 2027 for a 5-year period. We already have a large team of students and scientists working on the project. Currently, we have 40 students, PhD students, 9 full-time, 2 partially funded by other projects, and 3 visiting. And we have 7 master science students and 3 postdoc. Not all of them are at the time, but since the project started, we are able to deal with 3 postdocs on full-time basis. And we recently had our own internal Ortarchi annual workshop to discuss our progress that we have done. In this conference, it was held on September 2 to 3 for 2 days. And in this workshop, we were able to invite all our PhD students, professors involved in the project within Botswana, as well as from abroad. So as you can see at this group photo, there is a lot of diversity and collaboration going on under Ortarchi project at BEAST. Basically, as we discussed 22 research papers in this workshop, we are able to celebrate the legacy of our Tambo. The outline of my talk has about 4 parts, as you can see on this slide. Part 1 will be about climate variability and change, and part 2 will be looking at water resource, and then part 3 and 4 will be about livestock and vegetation resources. And the last part will be about how we adapt to climate change through some technology advancement and so on. I will not follow most of the the guidance given by NRF to really, but you'll see most of the details that are requested by the organizer exist here. For instance, the impact factor of the publications that we have done, the number of publications, the number of citations, probably you are going to see them. Before I discuss some of our results, what I would like to tell you is that climate change, there are 2 group of people, those who really believe that there is climate change and those who do not believe there is climate change, because they argue that climate change has been there since the geological time scale. It's true, it is there. And the current climate change is basically different from those changes. They don't want to believe this, partly because of their own interests, economic interests, and partly because of the limitation of the science. The science has its own limitation. To really understand there is climate change, we have to look at the observations. And as you know, observations are very limited, particularly in this part of the continent. And the analysis and conclusions that you can make from such observation is very much limited. Because of this, it is open for argument and debate whether there is climate change or not. To complement the in situ observation, there has been research going on, for instance, to use satellite observation and also to use models that are based on physical concepts and then representation of these physical concepts through mathematical representation. Here on this slide, as you can see, we try to look at, for instance, rainfall, which is really a good indicator of climate change from satellite data. And satellite data is not, as you know, a direct observation. And it depends on the thermal emissions that you get from the clouds up in the sky, and the sensor that records this thermal emission doesn't recognize there is also interference between the target, which is the cloud, and the sensor. So this interference leads to some sort of uncertainty. And satellite observation cannot be directly compared to in-situ observation as a result. So we need to work on a way of really correcting satellite biases, and that's what we did in this on this slide and this publication. When it comes to models, another way to really look at climate change is to use a physical concepts, and based on these physical concepts, you have to develop a mathematical model that represents the reality. And as you know, I think probably most of you knows that when you try to represent physical processes by a mathematical representation, you need to make certain assumptions because physical processes are continuum, whereas mathematical representation is a sort of discretization. So inherently, whether your model is perfect or not, it has some limitation. So what we are doing in this research is to try to look at these processes from models that integrate observation and theoretical concepts, and based on models that purely uses theoretical concepts. So here we see what is known as reanalysis, observation over Eastern Africa, and we can see that from time to time there is change in the skill and the efficacy of models in capturing reality over this region. Particularly, it's important to really check whether it works for African context because the topography is the major factor. The other factor is even the weather provision systems are completely different. So it's critical that we have to investigate. So we did this work under Ortarchi project. We also looked at different models. You know, nowadays, you know, there are different big, large centers in Europe and America who are running climate models of high sophistication, and the data is publicly available. So before you use this data to your interest, you need to really do some kind of evaluation and assess the skill of this model. So we compared high resolution and low resolution models over Southern Africa region, particularly in their capacity to really mimic, let's say, observed climate extremes, like continuous dry days, continuous wet days, dry spells, and so on. And what we have seen is that regardless of model resolution, the performance over Africa, and Southern Africa in particular, is still limited. So what we have to do about it? So we have to, again, apply bias correction techniques, not only to the satellite observation now, we have to apply bias correction to the climate models to really get them work, capture the observed reality in the region. So this bias correction usually built on statistical concepts. What we do in this case is we try to capture the correct for the observed mean in the model and also the variance in the model. So again, even the statistical bias correction is limited, but obviously there are certain changes for this improvement in this regard. When it comes to statistical bias correction, as I said, we are only able to correct mean and the variance of the observation data. But in reality, observation is continuum. You have extremes, you have distribution somewhere between the extreme and the mean, and so on. So you have upper tail and you have the lower tail, and all this matters when it comes to climate extremes. What we are currently working on is to really use AI. AI nowadays is used everywhere. What we are trying to do is to map either satellite data or model data to this existing in-situ observations. They are limited observations, but we can train a machine, a model, to learn how the model data compares with the actual observed in-situ data. So we are working on that one. Actually, we have applied in some of our results that I'm going to show later. And here, we know the limitation of models and satellite observation, but also we know that ocean has a longer memory. Ocean and atmosphere interacts to actually regulate the observed weather and climate that we are experiencing every day. So there is already indexes that try to give you some lead time in terms of forecasting what is observed globally, actually. So what we did in this work is to try to develop new indexes apart from the existing one, because the existing ones have some performance, but they have also limitations. So to overcome those limitations, we actually looked at new indexes in the region, particularly for Eastern Africa in this case. The second part of the Ortarchi project is water quality and water resource monitoring and forecasting. We used satellite observation coupled with models. In this case, what we did is also we have to use machine learning. The satellite observation is very huge. You cannot really use the whole satellite data. You just have to be selected because of the available computational resources. We try to really do some kind of mapping, try to assess how land use change, land cover change, regulate the surface flow, underground flow. But in this particular case, we looked at the water level in Gaborone Dam, a dam which supplies water to the Gaborone city in Botswana. We also looked at other processes. There is a large lake in East Africa, in Ethiopia, which is close to the big city, where there is a lot of industrial activities as well as agricultural activity. And we try to see how the water quality and also how the temperature over that lake is affected by these processes. We have done this work, and it was really a good work. And when it comes to water quality monitoring, actually what the common standard way is to collect water samples, take to the lab, and do the lab analysis to see the composition of the water. And based on that one, you can qualify whether the water is clean or not. But this kind of practice cannot be, in the first place, affordable because of cost related, but also it's not continuous. You can also only do this kind of observation at one time, maybe over a campaign period for a month and so on. But the atmospheric changes, the climate changes, is continuous, and every day there is change that is going on which affect water quality. So what we have to do, we have to monitor water from satellite, water quality from satellite. And we cannot exactly do the way we do the in-situ observation. In this case, what we do is that interaction of light from satellite, for instance, when it comes to active remote sensing, with optically active component of the water. It could be chlorophyll, it could be total suspended matter, it could be dissolved organic matter. We can do that one, that kind of analysis, and able to come up with some result. Usually this kind of exercise is time-consuming and also resource-intensive. So the alternative is to look at water color. Water color tells you about the quality of the water. So it's much easier to look at the water color from satellite, and we are able to demonstrate this concept on Lake Tana in Ethiopia. Of course, based on this study, we are able to actually develop a kind of forecasting tool, not only monitoring, to forecast water quality based on some information. For instance, hydroclimatic indicators like rainfall and runoff. Looking at them, we can actually forecast the water quality, how it deteriorates over time. So we developed a model, a statistical model, that predicts water quality over a region. We also use satellites for a number of things. High-resolution satellite. Nowadays, you can have satellite which is publicly in the open. Anyone can access it. Satellite with a 10-meter resolution. We use Sentinel satellite. We use Landsat satellite to monitor not only the water quality, but also to look at how flooding patterns change landscape and connectivity. For instance, how surface flow is affected by continuous flooding in the region. This is a change in flooding extent in transboundary Chobe River basin due to Zambezi and Kwando Lianete flood pulses. So we did this one, and this one is actually in the final stage of getting published in Journal of Remote Sensing. We also looked at ecosystem, particularly at the level of very high resolution, 4-meter resolution, and usually ecosystem can be affected for various reasons. One is climate change-induced changes. The other is human, particularly, for instance, in this case, there is artificial water points, which is established to attract, wildlife for touristic purposes, and we are able to really find out how this is affected. So let me quickly move. And the third part is ecological observation and modeling. Well, as I said, the project is about climate change impact in water resource, livestock, and vegetation dynamics. So we are able to look at how this is affected livestock production and also vegetation dynamics. So this is purely mathematical modeling. We used a kind of predator model for those who know this area. And we are able to publish this work in a very good journal, as you can see how this affected livestock production as well as the vegetation cover. And under this also, because of climate change, there is also ongoing wildfire. Some are, of course, triggered by human beings, but I'm talking about those that are triggered by extreme heat. This is common in Botswana, particularly over northwestern part of Botswana. And when wildfire starts, it doesn't just destroy the vegetation, but also it impacts the soil composition. We did a lot of work based on in-situ field observation, as well as satellite remote sensing, plus AI, machine learning concepts. Of course, I'm talking about live field moisture. That's what you can see from the sky, from space, using satellite. And you can see when you monitor this live field moisture, you can use it for different purposes. Here, I don't want to talk about it. This is just a deep learning combination neural network model that we have used to really make estimate of live field moisture over the whole Botswana. And you can see the difference between observation and simulation. Our machine learning prediction is very low, very low. So this is, again, the impact of wildfire on soil composition and also on soil chemical property as well. And they have done this kind of field work. This work is under review. Other thing is actually, it's more of vector-borne diseases. It's related with visceral leishmanias, VL for short. I don't know whether I pronounce it correctly. And we used a standard SIR type model that include climate change into, as part of the model. So we have published this in PLOS ONE. And we are also doing a kind of field studies, actually, to develop a model whereby water stress, how water stress can be alleviated through some kind of soil remediation. On the biotechnology side, we have done lab work that went to scale up to a farm level, as you can see here. Again, I lost one slide. Anyways, it's not that bad. Here, the good news is that we got a new project now, which is, there are 7 big projects that is funded by German institution. I'm part of a co-design hydrometrical observation system. It's very much complementary to our Ortarchi project. And the good thing about this project is not only we get additional money, which is a good thing, but apart from that, we are working with the local community, with Water Utility Corporation, with Metrical Department, to develop something that can be operational at the end of the project lifetime. So that is actually what we planned at the beginning, even for Ortarchi, to have a kind of a decision support system, but this naturally comes in to fit to that kind of needs. So thank you, Zata. Okay, all right.
Ok, merci beaucoup pour la présentation. Donc, à travers cette présentation, nous voyons que pour une souveraineté africaine, il faudrait qu'on puisse intégrer l'intelligence artificielle au One Health pour une adaptation en eau, en végétaux et également une adaptation de nos animaux. Pour gagner du temps, on va passer la prochaine présentation. Le professeur Gérald n'a pas pu être avec nous cet après-midi, donc on va passer la parole au professeur Chanda Emmanuel, qui va nous entretenir sur la qualité de l'eau et la protection des bassins versants. Professeur Chanda, vous avez 20 minutes, si possible en 15 minutes. Merci.
Thank you. The remote control. So forward. This one. Huh? I can point here. Can see it. Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Emmanuel Chanda from the University of Zambia. I am the interim chair for our node that deals with water conservation. As we say, water is life. So this afternoon I'm going to present those topics. First of all, alignment to O.R. Tambo's legacy, our research activities, and I'll present some of the key results and the challenges that we are facing in undertaking this research. And then on collaboration and interdisciplinary work, the impact that this research is having on communities and other stakeholders. And also we have managed to leverage some additional resources. And finally, I'll talk about training and mentorship. I seem to be going in circles with these slides. Well, I don't know what's going on. IT, can you please help? Thank you. I think some parts of the slides have been truncated, but here I was going to comment on how our research aligns with the Oliver Tambo initiative. As we know, Comrade O.R. Tambo was well known for politics and social justice and governance in South Africa. But now looking at him from the point of view of science and technology, he was a visionary in setting up this Africa Oliver Tambo Research Chair Initiative, which was designed to drive scientific research through investment in research and development and inspiration to pursue societal changes that we so much need in Africa. So our research in water focuses on innovation to investigate the potential for migrating water from one basin to the other. And in this case, we are talking about the Zambezi Basin and the Luapula Basin that we find in Zambia. What is the motivation for the research? Well, Zambia, for example, today is experiencing the worst drought in memory, and over 2 million people are at risk of hunger. And these problems with water has led to water shedding, which in turn leads to food insecurity and a slowdown in economic activities. Now, the Zambian government, of course, has planned some interventions to mitigate against this situation. You can see the headline in the newspaper: China steps in to connect 750 megawatts of power. This is because we are in power deficit caused by the low water levels in our catchment areas. So our research seeks to evaluate these options so that we can contribute in creating knowledge to improve water management in our river systems. We do have integrated water resources management, or IWRM, within the School of Mines at the University of Zambia, which aligns with Sustainable Development Goal number 6, on water and sanitation. So our research involved addressing two basic questions regarding water. Can Zambia as a country transfer water from one basin to the other? So we have two basins there, the Luapula Basin and the Kafua Basin, which I'm going to show in a while on a map. And second, can Zambia clean up the old mine tailings dams on the Copper Belt? Our focus here will be on the first research question. So this is the map of Zambia. The Luapula Basin, you can see, is up there, and the Zambezi Basin is the lower part of the country. That is the area and focus of our water management research under the Ortarchi program. So in relation to theme 1, which is water quality, quality and interbasin transfers, we have two basins, the Kafue River Basin in the south and the Luapula River Basin in the north. Now these two basins have distinct characteristics. The Luapula River Basin up north has got high precipitation. The rainfall can reach up to 1,000 millimeters. And so it is deemed to have excess water, which could be migrated to the Kafue Basin, which is characterized by hydropower generation, agriculture, and mining. Collectively, these activities contribute 50% of the economic activities of the country. And therefore, because of this, there is increased demand and weather variability on the water in this basin. There is a PhD study which looks at the weight-length relationship of the fish in this basin. And as we can see there, the yellow line represents what you would expect, which is 3. And we can see that for, excuse me, for most of the data that we got, we can see that the fish is in good condition. Some of the fish we use in Zambia includes the tilapia, which is a very delicious, delicious fish. Now, I must point out here that this data was collected from the markets, and so it was difficult to allocate them to specific spatial locations, but we do know where the fish came from. This one looks at correspondency analysis, and we can see the green area. From what we can conclude is that the green area here, this is at risk because we studied the invertebrates, the snails and the worms in this area, and we can see the concentration on these two plots. So the area here, which is the green area, a little bit further from the river where those samples were taken, seem to be at risk. I know Professor Mengestu spoke about using high-tech. Here we are looking at the water quality just by taking samples. And it was gratifying to find that the water quality, when we sampled both upstream and downstream, about 80% is of good quality. So the green section there, that is 58%, plus 22% on good. So both excellent to good water quality is evident in these river basins. The contamination upstream is mainly due to coliforms from those activities on the left of the diagram, which is agriculture, and people washing their clothes in the rivers and so on. We propose to move water from one basin to the other. from the northern part of the country to the southern part of the country. And this map shows the proposed routes for that water migration. One of the routes you can see in red there comes from the DRC to the Flafuta stream in the Kafue Basin. The other alternative route is quite lengthy. It is about 108 kilometers. Not so long by any standard, but consider our environment, that's a considerable distance. So the idea is to transport water from the basin that I showed earlier, which has got excess water, to this southern part where we don't need water for agriculture and power generation. Interestingly, the elevations for these two areas, it is feasible to move water across. However, we will need to do a lot of engineering design and cost estimation in order to determine the feasibility of this project. In terms of water quantities, the basin up north has got in excess of 6 billion cubic meters of water compared to 500 million cubic meters of water in the south. I'll now move on to the challenges that we are facing. Number one, it's difficult for us to keep postdoc to support the project outcomes, and this is due to funding for these positions. And number two, because of the way we are doing this research to go and collect samples out there in the river systems, we have to do with long distances in excess of 400 meters, and that obviously calls for a lot of logistics to take students out there to the field to conduct their field work. We like robust science engagement approaches, such as using art, as we showed here in the top diagram, to support co-design so that we can popularize the understanding of water issues in our country. We are collaborating with various partners, both regionally and internationally, through short courses, dissemination, for example, through Waterness conferences. We have exchange visits. We provide data, scaled to climate data sets, and then we engage with stakeholders. And those are some of the organizations that we collaborate with. We have SASCO, WEMAST, WaterNet, and so on. We do engage with different stakeholders, the government of the Republic of Zambia and related water entities, and also the communities. We try to disseminate the information as regards to what we're doing in managing our water resources. Knowledge impacts. So far, we started in 2022. So far, 5 peer-reviewed publications in fairly high-ranking journals, 20 conference proceedings, and there are now a number of papers that are under review for publication. Additional resources, we have been able to leverage the Ortarchi chair with additional resources from German government through BMBF to the tune of 60,000 euros, and then the Worldwide Fund, 40,000 euros, World Meteorological Organization, 30,000 euros, and the European Union, 154,000 euros, and of course the TPEC project, which is 316,000 euros. These are ongoing projects, and we have been able to leverage because of the Oliver Tambo Research Chair initiative. Let me move on to training and mentorship. We have now 8 master's students and 5 PhDs. Obviously, we have to observe the budgetary allocations. And the long-term successor to the chair, Dr. Kawawa Banda, has now been promoted to the rank of associate professor. We are in the process of recruiting 4 master's students, and also we are engaging with the Copperbelt University. You heard a presentation from my colleague area of possible research collaborations. So in conclusion, the Ortarchi chair at the University of Zambia is progressing with its mandate in terms of water research. It provides us an opportunity to enhance our integrated water management in the country. We feel that because this idea of moving water from one basin to the other affects our neighboring countries, especially the DRC, there will be need to engage in some sort of water diplomacy, and also to study in detail the implications on socio-economic order. And so we're looking at advancing this approach in terms of economic modeling, dynamic systems modeling, water allocation, perhaps forming a committee or a consortium, intergovernmental consortium, to look at this feasibility of moving water, including climate vulnerability. And so we do require a lot of support from other disciplines, not just water management. Increased funding is required in subsequent phases to support our postdocs. We are lacking in that area, so we do need a lot of support in order to enhance our research activities. And also we are determined to continue leveraging on other sources of funding so that we can create a critical mass of postgraduate students and accomplish all the objectives that were mandated to us under this chair. On that note, I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you. OK, merci beaucoup au professeur pour sa brillante présentation sur la gestion des eaux. Just a moment. Thank you. Alors, on va passer à la dernière présentation pour gagner du temps. Professeur Salia Firibou sur la sécurité et la qualité des aliments de l'Université du Ghana. Et on prendra toutes les questions à la fin de sa présentation. Professeur Kwesi Firibou Salia de l'Université du Ghana.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Okay, good afternoon. My name is Kwesi Salia, as you already heard, and I am the chair for University of Ghana, and we work on food security. Now, this morning, listening to Natasha talk about the values of OR Tambo, and all those values we try to implement in our chair. And how we do it is this. When we get students, we want to know their expectations of the research, and along the line too, we want to know what their impressions about the research is. And so occasionally we pick their responses. So one of our PhD students, for instance, won an award sometime in 2022. This was at the ICN. ICN is International Conference of Nutritionists, and this was in Tokyo. And so when we asked him what his impressions were, what he said was that the scholarship has profoundly impacted my academic and career trajectory by providing critical resources and international exposure. Now, this is about professional excellence. I can go on and on. I just mentioned two. We had another student who came from Francophone, I think actually from this country. And what she said after her defense was that winning the award built my confidence and increased my self-esteem because as a Francophone student, I could not imagine being able to defend my proposal and my work in front of well-known and outstanding lecturers. I mean, coming from Francophone, according to her, she thought she would have language barriers. But there was another interesting story. There was this student who almost fell off her program, the master's level. And so when she won the award, she took her work so seriously that what she said was that the O.R. Tambo Scholarship has eased my financial burden by funding the entire project from field work through to the cost of all laboratory analysis. Now, along the line, I will show you more about this particular student. But let's go back to our research on food security, which is quality improvement and safety enhancement. Now, food security, we know, is broad. So I am interested in the post-harvest aspect of food security. You can have all the best agricultural production and all that. But if you cannot handle the food after bumper harvest and all that, you'll still lose it. And so there will still be food insecurity. So our work is based on how to handle the food after it is harvested. The problem is that in traditional African food processing, there's usually poor adoption of technology, poor adoption of quality management systems. And so due to that, we usually have very high food losses. Even if you have bumper harvest, it goes waste. It goes waste because of poor processing habits. It also goes waste because of poor hygienic conditions. And because of poor hygienic conditions, we usually have unacceptable food safety issues. I believe we all are aware of, or I'm sure you've all heard about food poisoning issues in our communities. So much report on diarrheal diseases, and so on. And so it's because of the traditional ways that they use to handle the food with inefficient processing methods. And what that leads to is poor food quality that you can never, is so variable that you can't predict. Today you go and buy a product, tomorrow you go back to the same person, the product is different. And so we decided, so for our project, we are determined that so for our project, we've identified these problems and divided it into 3 thematic areas. And the first thematic area is, why don't we look at the traditional processing methods for a variety of foods and see how we can use process designs to improve them and maybe make innovations. The other thematic area is, of course, food safety. As I said, there's a lot of issues about food safety, microbial safety, and chemical safety. How do we minimize these in our traditional food process? Finally, we are interested in food packaging. Now, if you go around our streets, our shops, packaging is inferior for most food products. And it's the packaging that determines the shelf life of the food. It's the packaging that also determines whether food is contaminated or not. But we have issues about packaging also because of the materials used in packaging. There's so much use of single-use plastics and other plastics that the medical community is telling us that can we find other materials. And so these are the three areas that we are working in our research. So we have 5 research objectives: identifying important commodity chains that we can work with, optimizing traditional processing technologies for quality enhancement and shelf life extension, valorizing agricultural processing waste streams. Now, if you go to where there's a lot of manufacturing or even local manufacturing, what do they do with the waste? Where do they throw them? How do they handle them? Is it not possible that the waste can also be used as a resource? Apart from that, if you throw biological material away just in the open for it to rot, what you are doing is increasing the carbon footprints because it's going to rot, and what is happening is that you get carbon dioxide, so greenhouse gas emissions. Can we delay that? Can we capture it in other useful products? Then we are interested in risk profiling of the foods, both microbiological risk profiling and assessment and chemical risk profiling and assessment. Finally, can we get alternative materials, packaging materials for our indigenous foods, beyond plastics, beyond leaves, and beyond other things that we use to package the food. So based on that, based on these 5 objectives, we have various projects depending on students' interest. So our first project that was handled was commodity value chains, where 27 agricultural crops were identified for their commercial value, and that's what we've been working on for now, some of them not all yet. And so the next one was process optimization on innovations of traditional food processes. And so for process development, for that, there are many things we are looking at. One, can we process foods differently? Can we adopt modern technology to traditional foods? And so we had a student who worked on ohmic heating. Now, ohmic heating is just applying electricity directly onto food. The food becomes the resistance, and so it increases its temperature, and it cooks very rapidly. So we tried that. We got a student to actually fabricate an ohmic chamber and tried it on a very simple product, and it worked. We just need to do more of such things. The other thing is we're also looking at the process optimization of basic traditional foods. And here I mentioned some that look basic, but really not. If you've visited Ghana or other countries even here, fermented foods, fermented cereal foods are popular. So we tried some of them: gankenke, fantikenke, hausa cocoa. For beverages, I have a student from this country who is very interested in what they call zonko. The Hausas will call it kununzaki. It's basically raw corn, raw cereal flour with spices that they add water. But it's dangerous. It's not heat processed. There's a lot of microbial load. How can you reduce microbial load and make it safe? And so another candidate, a student, is working on fermented fish, momone, and this is the student who nearly fell out of school because of finances, and when she got this grant, she gave it her all, and as we speak, she's doing very well with it. We still have other projects that we are working on where we are turning agricultural waste into valuable products. We are also partnering another research station, I think, here on what we call smart fruits, where we are looking at agricultural fruit processing waste, identifying enzymes that can break down the waste and using those enzymes in processing. Probably will talk a little bit about that. Other projects we are dealing with are safety issues, risk profiling and assessment of microbial and chemical hazards in selected vegetables. Now, you are in luck if you just walk into any restaurant and order salad with fresh tomatoes and chili peppers, and you do not visit the loo, because these are fresh cut fruits, and depending on the restaurant, you are likely to have microbial contamination. And students actually did this work, and we got a number of incidences. So aflatoxin, we know, for tropical countries is a problem. And so we are also looking at remediation effects. What can we do to break down aflatoxins if possible? And we have a student looking at bacterial capabilities of breaking down aflatoxins and making the food safer. And one of the projects we are doing also is developing policy frameworks and traceability systems for artisanal palm oil value chain. Now, this is important because when there's an incidence of a problem, how do you trace where the contamination started from? So if we are able to establish traceability systems in our food delivery system, then you can easily check all the way back to the farmer or to a particular processor that this was where it came from. Now, we had issues of food poisoning outbreaks in Accra, and it took a while for us to pin down what the issues were. Now, these are just some of the projects we are working on. Some are at advanced level, and some are still at the initial level, depending on who the students are. And of course, packaging is also what we are also working on, with about 3 or 4 projects going on in packaging. I'll just go ahead and give you some of the outputs so far and the challenges we have. So for the commercially viable, nutrition-sensitive value chains, we broke them into a number of groups. So we have the tree crops, the legumes, cereals, fruits and vegetables, roots and tubers. We are definitely not working on all of them now, but we are working on some, and some too we are collaborating with another country, Zambia, working on mango, pineapple, and tomatoes. So what are some of the outputs? I just talked about the omic chamber, where we had a student, that's the one to the left. You see the chamber, you see the electrodes, where she designed this with an electrician, where she put the sample in, whether it's milk or milk with millet, which they locally call Burkina as a beverage. And she compares that with traditional, conventional heating of Burkina. And we saw that it was definitely much faster to use this process to get Burkina, and that there was no microbial contamination or anything. And so the issue now is, how do you package this? That will be the next steps to consider. Another thing, another project we are working on that I haven't talked about is that the population of the aged is increasing very rapidly. There are now more old people living all the way to 90 and beyond. And we haven't considered their feeding. If you have dealt with an old person, you will know that they are very troublesome at some age about their food choices. It's not their fault. I'm probably getting there. What happens is their dentition gets weaker, their sense of flavor changes. And because of that, their choice of food is also different. So we try to get multinational food companies to get interested in developing food for the aged. They usually say, what's the population? We are looking at the younger population because there are more. But statistics show that the aged is also growing and it's a huge market for product development. So what we are doing now is let's try something. So we are using local resources, and there's a reason we are doing that. When you import even feed, I mean any baby formula, all, okay, thank you. And so this student is looking at basic commodities like millet, peanuts, sesame seeds to develop high energy nutritional products using what they call the daily recommended allowance tables for people of that age. Well, so the output I was talking about is more money, where in this photo, what you see is Jessica. She goes to the processes of fermented fish, stays with them, learns all the processes for us to know what the critical unit operations are for this product. Then she comes back, and now that she has identified the critical unit operations, she is in the lab trying now to see how we can upgrade this process to get a product that can be packaged or can be packaged in different forms that it can be delivered to the consumer. Who are our collaborators? We have a number of research collaborations. So the carbon capture for microbial protein synthesis, as I was talking about, we are collaborating with, I think, CNRST in Burkina Faso, with Danida, that is Danish Technical University. What we want to do is identify microbial enzymes, as I said, that will break down the fruit waste into syrups that we can convert into proteins or into other products. We are also collaborating with Zari on fruits, which I just talked about. And we are collaborating with researchers in STEPRI, that's Ministry of Science and Technology in Accra, and University of Guelph, to identify how we can work on the aflatoxin menace. So this is just an example of the microbial enzyme thing that I'm talking about. And when we went to Zambia and visited a farm, the young man said that these days when he sees a mango plant coming up, he has the urge to just get a cutlass and cut it down. What is the reason? That during glut, it's more expensive to carry mangoes to town and just discard it and come. So we suggested, why don't you convert it into something like alcohol and all? And so he became very interested. And so what we have been doing here, to the left, you see those pots there? We have fruit wine that is now aging. Something we've been doing for fun, but now we are doing it for research. And I get friends, a lot of friends, doing fruit wines for them. You can also dry it. You have freeze-dried products, tomato, whatever. You freeze-dry, and it's a product by itself. Remember, the first time we dried tomatoes this way, the technicians just went on eating it as a snack. And so these are options that we think we can package our food and reduce post-harvest losses. These are very basic things that we are trying to do in our research. Now, we have research collaborators, and we also have a whole research team. These are some of the collaborators, the key research collaborators, CSIR, of course, in Ghana, IIT, International Institute of Tropical Agriculture, based in Ibadan, Maghama Engineering, and our Association of Ghana Industries, where we try to get our students to work with the food industries. And so where there's anything, we are there to help with them. Then Durban, University of Technology in South Africa, and University of Minnesota in US. Now, there are many others. Now, this slide just shows you our collaboration with AGI, that in September, they were running a Ghana Industrial Summit and exhibition. So they invited the university, and we sent some undergraduate students to man a booth. Well, 2 of them eventually got hired after school to work. So those are the ones you see at the side. We also try to influence, to help the community. So we organized a 2-day workshop that was sponsored by USAID. It's a training workshop on hygiene, food safety, and entrepreneurship. We did that to 60 SMEs, food businesses. These were not very educated people. These are the people who work on street foods. And it was in collaboration with the Food and Drug Authority and the Department of Agricultural Economics. And you can see them. Of course, Ortarchi was very well in charge, and Dr. Afrifa sitting there had to teach these people food hygiene, food microbiology in the local language. Now, what are some of the advantages we have from this research? Of course, as you see, it has increased our visibility that we can go around working with SMEs, with food companies, and it's also improved quality of research due to the availability of funds and relevant equipment. And we get a number of people actually coming to use our lab because of the kind of equipment we have. Now, my research team is wide. It's different kind of experts are in it. We have nutritionist Matilda, Nicole Sharon, who is with me here, Angela, who is a microbiologist, Emmanuel Essien, who is an agric engineer, and Frida Sem, the agric economist. Training and mentoring. We have cohort 1, we had 5 MPhil and 4 PhDs. Cohort 2, we had 8 MPhil and 1 PhD. And some have finished. So, for instance, 1 PhD graduated and is working with us now as postdoc, and 4 MPhils have submitted their thesis. And challenges, procurement, as I heard, it's all over. Procurement is a big issue, and also below average writing skills. We've tried. Now, the University of Ghana has what we call PADA, which is a postgraduate academy, And we've been trying to get that to train them in writing, but it's slow. Before I said, I like to say that sometimes it's good to go somewhere. Now, the Pro-Vice Chancellor or Research, who is here with me, because of the chair position, sent us to Thailand. And why to Thailand? Because they're also a tropical country. Our food issues are the same food issues they have, street foods and all that. So we went to learn to see that even SMEs there are given a lot of leverage to work and to improve their products. So we went to this particular professor, that's his university, and this is not a supermarket. This is a shop owned by the university, so that undergraduates, whatever they produce is displayed there for people to come and buy. And in that way, it also, let's say, motivates the students to go into private practice to get their own startups. Thank you for your attention.
Ok, merci beaucoup, professeur Salia. Donc can you take please here? Est-ce qu'on peut prendre les questions? Professeur Tidjou, professeur Chenda Emmanuel, vous pouvez nous rejoindre.
Ouais.
Donc à travers cette présentation, can you take please here? Please. Yes? Ok. Professeur Chenda, professeur Tidou et professeur Salia. Donc pour une autosuffisance alimentaire, comme ils l'ont dit tout à l'heure, il faut qu'on puisse valoriser nos fruits, valoriser nos légumes. Alors quand on va à Orodara dans nos régions, pendant les saisons des mangues, il y a des mangues qui pourrissent, c'est les porcs qui viennent les manger, donc il faut les sécher pour pouvoir les valoriser. Les légumes également, il faut les sécher pour les valoriser. Alors on peut prendre quelques questions. Oui.
Ok.
Notre troisième présentateur n'est pas là.
Okay. So, Professor Salia, thank you for the great presentation. I wanted to find out from you regarding the entrepreneurship parts of your work, where you try to take the products to the market. I've been to one of the events by your guys, and I was trying to taste some of the products they produce. I don't know whether they are a student or not, but it has to do with the cocoa wine.
The wine?
Yeah.
Fruit wine?
Yeah, the fruit wine.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
My issue has to do with whether you consider international standardization of the products such that those products will end up on the market and be able to compete with international brands. Or do you face any challenge in that respect? Yeah.
Okay, if I'll answer. Yes, the whole idea is to internationalize our products. I mean, make them as good as possible so that they can be sold anywhere. And so what you saw is still the beginning. And we are very aware of international standards of all products, not just the fruit wine. We happen also to support GSA, that's Ghana Standard Authority, and other standards in our everyday work. So yes, in fact, the whole idea, one of the reasons, one of our objectives on this Ortarchi project is to make products that can be competitive anywhere in the world. So that's actually our aim. Thank you very much. Yeah. So for this wine, for instance, we procured the additives, that is the wine acids, all the modifiers, we procured them from the US because normal fruits will not have that malic acid and the acidity taste that you get from grapes. So what we did was, you can buy those acids and come and compound them with your fruit juices, and after fermentation and aging, they should have the same profile of flavors as the others. Now, the only reason we call it fruit wine is that that's what the market says we should. If you did not use grape to make wine and use any other product, any other fruit to make wine, call it that fruit wine. That is why we keep saying fruit wine. But yeah, it should be as good as any wine. Thank you.
Thank you. Still following up with questions on food safety.
Yes.
Thanks a lot, Prof, for your presentation and actually especially learning about the efforts being made towards preventing food loss, product development, improvement, inequality, and the like. I have a few questions. I saw that one of the areas that you are working on is ready to use supplementary foods for the old persons. But you know, Africa has an increasing population, especially the young population is quite high. And then when it comes from 0 to 5 years, the issue of stunting, micronutrient deficiency is quite high. And one of the reasons is that in poor families, the nutritious foods are quite expensive. So I don't know why you have not geared towards ready-to-use therapeutic foods to help combat malnutrition, which is a big problem. And you know the brain grows from 0 to 5 years. Some of those students that cannot write very well might have already been damaged at an early age, and therefore human capital development could be a challenge. And then the other one is on process optimization, especially the fermentation bit, which is a good initiative, and I can see you are focusing on traditional foods. But one of the challenges with the optimization process is that they always say that these foods don't taste as nice as the traditionally handled ones. And that's the challenge that sometimes we face in research. So I'm trying to find out about your study designs, if you combine like the microbial profile and the metabolic dynamics which are responsible for the flavor and the like, and whether you do consumer analysis, the sensory survey and the like, and how the data is coming out. And then the other one is regarding home heating, which is an innovative processing method. I don't know, because the food matrix, and you know some of these are indigenous foods, and the matrix might not have ever been studied anywhere, and I don't know how the thermal processes compare to the traditional ones in terms of the F, Z, and 12D values. Thank you, that's what I wanted to learn. And then the other thing is about culture collection. I don't know whether you are preserving those microbes. Our colleague from Botswana talked about the climate change and the warming, and he showed the heat maps and the like, and it's very likely that we may lose some of those strains for good. I don't know what efforts towards along that line. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me start from the RUTF to your DZ values of ohmic heat. Now, we actually started work on RUTFs with very young people. I've actually been working with people, with kids as young as 6 months. So with developed, we've worked with companies to develop foods for infant feeding, 6 months to 24 months. And like you said, for school-age kids, RUTF, when Dr. Manare and his people were in Malawi, and I work with him, we know that school-age children are malnourished mostly because the mothers think that after 2 years, wean the kids off, another one is coming, they are ready to go to school, they should mind their business. So we realize they are now the people who need nutrition. That is where we started working on RUTFs. These RUTFs were ready to use therapeutic foods, high energy, high protein foods to stop protein, mainly targeted at protein energy malnutrition. And that seemed to be working. And people are now aware that the gap now is school-age children. But while we are looking at that, the other demographic that really requires attention, as I'm saying, is taking care of the aged. So all these multinational companies on food are targeting the school-age children because they say, when I talk to some of them, they say they are where the market is, and that's where they are targeting. As for the old men, they say, the old people, they say they'll soon die off, so don't. But if you have taken care of, if you've been a caregiver to an old person, you will know that they also need that intervention. And so while the market is sensitive to the age group you are talking about, we think that there are many enough people working on that. So let's create awareness of the older generation. And I believe, and not just believe, we actually encountered a company in Bangkok, Thailand, that was also talking about feeding for the aged. And so at least somebody is also talking about it somewhere. I don't know if I've answered your question on that. Now, as to the ohmic heating, so far what we have done is fluid food. And fluid food because it's easy to create convections, get heat transfer by convections. That's why we are targeting fluid food now. When we perfect that, we will now look at by conduction. But food is a poor conductor of heat. And so we'll need to get different ways of considering that for solid food. It's a lot easier with liquid food. There are still model systems that we are testing to see how we can adopt modern processes like this to our traditional foods. There are many others we are considering, including high pressure, including non-thermal means, non-thermal processes. But these are still things ahead, projects ahead that we haven't, because getting good students at PhD level, I heard a lot of you say it's difficult to get, but that's what we are. If we get more students, these are some of the areas we'll be looking at. As to the Z values of this process, yes, with 6D, now D here is thermal reduction time, where it's terminology that we use to measure the amount of heat energy that you will deliver to a particular product to get it cooked or to get microbial load down. At 6D, we stopped at 6D and it was literally sterile. I don't remember the other question. Am I done?
Can I go? Can I go?
The other question was on optimization of fermentations.
Yeah.
Sometimes as we do that, sometimes the flavor profiles don't come nicely as in the traditional processes, and that sometimes makes people to reject these foods that have gone through the optimization process. And then the other one, because of climate change and so many issues, we are also losing some of these traditional cultures. So I was just asking about culture collection and preservation.
Oh,
thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so for the flavor profile of our fermented food, so what the student is doing is she's gone to the processes, she studied them, we've identified the critical factors that they use. Critical factors in terms of length of storage, time, temperature, all those are taken into consideration. So you are looking at minimum, maximum. So you have defined your experimental space within which you will then do the work. Now, I know that extreme points may not be very useful, but if you are able to capture the extreme points in that experimental space, you should be able to model to get an optimum point where the flavors will just be right. So that is our experimental design there. As to climate change and whether we are losing some of these microbes, that is precisely why we are doing this kind of work. If you looked at the slide, you saw that the people who were teaching her were very old ladies. These are ladies in their 60s, 70s, and all that. And their regret to her and their admiration also for her was that as young as she was more willing to come and sit and endure the stench of fermented fish to learn it, such that it can continue. And so, if you, by your point about whether we are keeping cultures, it's something for somebody else to do. I'm sure I haven't thought about that, but it's a good point you have raised. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I commend all the presenters, and I'm Professor Kashaigili from Tanzania. My question is directed to Professor Gizao on climate change. In most of the climate applications, when it comes to hydrological modeling, one of the big challenge is the choice of the climate model to apply or to use in the modeling. Our recent work in Tanzania, covering most part of the East Africa and South Africa, using the RCM models, we used the 34 models to look at the behavior and the responses. The output indicated that at almost 50% indicated wetting, while 50% indicated almost drying. Then when it comes to choice of the model for use in a particular hydrological applications, there are issues around the uncertainties that are embedded in this model. So what is your experience from your modeling work, and how do you advise when it comes to decision making under those uncertainties that are embedded in most of these climate models? Thanks.
Okay, thank you for the questions. Yeah, you are right. Some of the points I want to try to indicate regarding not only hydrological models, but even climate models, they have a lot of uncertainties because of the way they are built. There are different levels of sophistication in the models. Apart from that, inherently, almost every model, as a mathematical representation of a physical process, they have limitation. When it comes to the choice of model to apply to certain locations, you need to do a kind of skill assessment, because some models may work in some places depending on the circumstance and the data type you provide as an input. So evaluation is important. When it comes to hydrological model, calibration is also important with the good data. Based on ensemble concept, for instance, if you run several models, some of the errors that you find in the different models could be smoothed out. And we know from climate models, ensemble mean is a good representation of the physical reality. So what I can say from my experience is that definitely you have to really assess them before you use them. And also the input data is really important because most of the hydrological models, you provide input from the climate models. And the climate models usually, when it comes to rainfall, for instance, they have never predicted zero rainfall. They always have some rainfall, even during dry season. And that is very critical for impact models, including the hydrological models. So you have to really do some kind of bias correction of the input data so that the models will perform better, apart from its own limitation, the way it is built from different assumptions. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentations. I found them really interesting in so many different ways from the time that we were engaging. I have questions for all of the profs, and I start with Professor Salia and potentially also Professor Swai from the previous presentation. I wondered whether you could share some experiences that you're having working with communities. What are you learning that is in the context of the practice of engaged research? My second question is to UNZA, Professor Chander. What has been your experience as you go through this process of being interim as a chair and the university's own succession planning, sustainability of the chair itself so far? And then my last question to Professor Tidu is around how you are connecting your work with the national and international policy discourses on climate change. It wasn't very clear in the presentation. I wondered whether you could share more. There is so much potential for collaboration amongst the chairs at BOOST, CBU, UNZA, and UEM. And I'm hoping that after the presentations that we've had today, that there will be some discussion about something that you could potentially do together as 4 chairs. Thank you.
Okay, so I go first. In our line of research, especially with first the agent that I was talking about, we engage them, we go to them and discuss their food choices. And so it was our development of the product was solely based on their input, what they want, how hard or how soft they want products. So it's usually directed by the community, what the community is interested in, why, and then we then bring our science in and to design the study. So if, for instance, most of them are more interested in beverages, liquid food versus hard food, so our objective is clear. We are going to work on drinkable beverage. Then how do we package it? If they have difficulty drinking from straw or from cups, then we design the packaging too. And the same way we have, I remember somebody asked about sensory. Same way when we're developing the product sensory, that is again, input from the community, from the demographic that we are working for. We go to them and get their input, and based on their input, we come and design the product. I don't know if that is clear. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that governance question. So I'm sure you're aware that we had a sudden departure of the former Ortarchi chair at the University of Zambia. And so the university decided that we need to have an interim chair in place while we are waiting for a substantive chair for that role. The challenge the university has is that that role, as you are aware, is for a full professor. And we had a discussion with our National Science and Technology Council on that. And the university's position is that they are going to review this matter at the end of the year, which is 6 months since the departure of the chair, the Ortarchi chair. At that point, it's hoped that there will be a lot more candidates to choose from. If that doesn't happen, then fortunately or unfortunately, I would love to continue in that role for the foreseeable future. But having said that, the university is actually in the process of recruiting, not specifically for the role of the chair, but to increase the pool of professionals who might take on this role. I myself have a lot of responsibility, as you know. That has been my experience playing a dual role of dean and also Ortarchi chair. And the university made some changes recently, now moving all the deans to executive deans, meaning more responsibilities. And that's why the university is very keen to address the issue of succession at the end of this year. But we are also hoping that we could have a discussion with you yourselves, the funders, whether it's feasible or possible for an associate professor to take on this role in the interim. I think those are the comments I can make. Well, regarding my experiences, I think it has been wonderful to interact with the researchers. We have a cohort of excellent researchers in the program, both at master's and PhD level. And just to see the enthusiasm of these young people trying to address water issues in our country and across the region, I think that has been a very good experience. And also we have very strong administrative support structures in the school. And I think where we need to improve perhaps is the involvement of our key stakeholders within the university. As you know, this project is multidisciplinary, so we have people from humanities and social sciences, geography departments, and so on, agriculture. So I think we, apart from supervision, we need to work a little bit more closely with those entities within the University of Zambia. Thank you.
Okay, the question from Dorothy is related with how far we are engaged with international community, particularly to show what we have done at BIS as Ortarchi project. I think that is what I understand, and I want to answer in this direction. Myself, I have participated in a number of forums, regional and international forums, international conferences to present my results. Apart from, of course, our published works have been also cited actually over 100 times so far, given that we have a very recent output under Ortarchi, less than 2 years. So it has been cited more than 100 times, and I believe that, that there is, this will disseminate our result and our solution. And in addition to this, my students and my collaborators, in Ortarchi at BIUS, I'm not the only professor. There are other professors working under me in different thematic areas. They have students, these students have also results that are published, that are under review. They have been in different workshops, international workshops and conferences. So I believe that we have reached the international committee. Locally, we have engagement with the local community in Botswana. We went all the way to the village to talk about climate change, vulnerability, and how they have been coping up with the change that's going on. And we have a really good feedback from the local community, and we hope to include those indigenous knowledge, particularly when we develop the disease support system in the future. Thank you.
Une dernière question pour les présentateurs. Oui, une dernière question.
In my case, I realized that the community, actually, they cannot wait to engage with us, especially when they know that the knowledge they have can be commercialized into a drug, and perhaps even the factory can be built in where they are in their village. They get quite excited, and especially on realizing that now they are working with a university, which is a well-known institution like Nelson Mandela. And the fact that they always thought that universities are blue sky scientists and they've very little to do with them, and now we are coming to their level and discussing with them